Johnny Talk Sports with the Week 8 college football predictions. Last week, I was hoping for a breakout week. Not only did I get a breakout week, but I got a perfect week. 11-0 last week. Really impressive performance. I know it's going to be pretty tough to follow up, but I'm going to do my best to make good predictions this week. So let's get into it. But before that, I did another top 10 ranking this past Saturday after the games were finished. I'll put that link in the description box down below to check out what my rankings are for this week. Very educational, very well thought of. So there was a lot of chaos last week in college football. We had Georgia go down to South Carolina in what is the biggest upset of the college football season so far. Could we be in for another chaotic week in college football? Well, there are a couple teams that do go on the road and have tough road tests this week. Other teams, they have some challenges this week. Even though the matchups, they look favorable towards the favorites on paper, you just never know. Any given Saturday, anything can happen. So let's begin with a Friday night game, number 4 Ohio State and Northwestern. Northwestern, for the game plan for them, simply is to sell out the run. Kind of like what they did against Wisconsin, where they stacked up and sold the run against Jonathan Taylor, which it worked after the opening drive until about later on in that second half when Jonathan Taylor started to get going. But the problem with that is Ohio State, not only do you have J.K. Dobbins to worry about and Master Teague, that 1-2 punch, but you also have to worry about Justin Fields being a running quarterback. So Northwestern has to also account for Justin Fields. And offensively, for Northwestern, is there anything they can really do on offense at this point? Because their pass offense is the worst in the Power 5. And Ohio State is 8th in run defense, which is what Northwestern's strength is, with Isaiah Bowser and Drake Anderson. So I think this is going to be a blowout in favor of Ohio State. I think it's going to be a really miserable game for Northwestern. I'm going to say 48-7. But any given Saturday, though, am I right? Next, we have number 3 Clemson versus Louisville. Louisville is coming off an upset win over Wake Forest last week. So this was the type of win that Louisville needed to kind of have a positive outlook on this program. And they can be even bigger by pulling off an upset against not only a title contender, but the defending national champions. But will it happen, though? A big question was, how was Clemson going to come out after the bye week, which before that was a scare against North Carolina? But they dominated Florida State last week. The running game was dominant. Trevor Lawrence did make one mistake, but he looked pretty efficient other than that one mistake. So some keys for Clemson here. I would say just do what you're doing, because the running game was dominant last week. ETN is a huge dominant player on this offense. Prevent mistakes from Trevor Lawrence, because this is giving me some vibes of Clemson and NC State. And the reason why is because I think Louisville's offense, they could end up staying in this ball game. Because Louisville is 16th in total offense. And if they can prevent a fast start, if they can prevent Clemson from getting a fast start, I think Louisville, they can stay in it long enough, they could have a chance. Kind of look at North Carolina's playbook. Maybe try doing a flea flicker, doing some other trick play to kind of get your crowd into it, move the ball early, show you're not afraid. And also, avoid getting into long yard situations, because the last thing you want to do when you're playing a team like Clemson is to find yourself deep in 3rd and longs and 2nd and longs. But with Louisville coming off a big and emotional win, I think Clemson, I think we're starting to see the return of Clemson. Yes, they did struggle at some points during the season so far, but I think we're getting back to that dominance that we've been seeing out of Clemson these last 4 or 5 seasons. And I think Clemson picks up a pretty significant win here, although it may not be as significant as maybe what I originally thought. I think Louisville could easily stay in this. But can they really? Louisville hung in there with Notre Dame pretty well in the first half, but then Notre Dame pulled away in the second half. So I think if Louisville can play all 4 quarters, find yourself in the game, and then take your shot. So I'm going to say Clemson wins, but not by that much. I'm going to say Clemson only wins by about 13 to 17 points. I think Louisville can stay in it for that long if they can prevent making mistakes and if they can get the ball moving against Clemson. Next, we have number 9 Florida and South Carolina. South Carolina is coming off a massive road win over Georgia, who was number 3 in the nation in double overtime. Can South Carolina pull off another top 10 upset this week? The Gators are trying to recover from a 14-point loss to LSU last week. Although with quarterback Kyle Trask, he's not at 100% with his injury. But a big key for Florida is you got to look at the Georgia tape and look at what they did wrong and how they lost the game. Because the play calling for Georgia, it just looked pretty conservative. In fact, it looked too conservative. And that's a big reason why South Carolina won that game. Georgia played scared in that one. But for Florida, you can't play scared right at this point. Because even though Florida lost last week, they still control their own destiny. Now, Georgia still controls their own destiny as well. But I think Florida is going to get this win. I feel like if you get Kyle Pitts involved, because he can be a mismatch for anyone on anyone's defense. It's a mismatch 100% of the time. And for South Carolina, you've got nothing to lose here. You've already pulled off an upset against Georgia, and possibly, depending on how the college football realm, depending on how it shapes out the rest of the season, you spoiled their chances of potentially going to the college football playoff. And South Carolina, they could also spoil Florida's season as well. They can spoil the season of Georgia and Florida in back-to-back weeks. And if South Carolina can force turnovers, they have a good chance from the game. Just like last week, they picked off Jake Fromm 3 times. But I think the Gators, they win this game, but I think it's going to be really close. I think Florida wins, but only by a score of 27-23. And next we have Temple and number 19 SMU. I didn't think I'd be talking about this game in preseason. I really didn't. Well, before the season started, I didn't think I'd be talking about this matchup. But Temple and number 19 SMU. SMU is a candidate for a New Year's Six Bowl. Right now they are in a race between Boise State, Cincinnati, themselves of course, Appalachian State. It's about a 4 or 5 team race right now for that group of 5 New Year's Six Bowl bid. But SMU, they do have a pretty difficult schedule coming up though. They still got to play Memphis and they got to play Tulane, a team that is very underrated at this point in the season. And Temple, speaking of Memphis, Temple pulled off an upset against Memphis last week. Can they pull off another upset against a group of 5 team that is looking to try and get into a New Year's Six bowl game? The way I see this matchup, SMU has the 11th best total offense in college football. However, they're 63rd in total defense. But Temple they kind of have the double package. Temple has the 31st ranked total defense and they're 39th in total offense. And Temple has shut down Maryland's offense and Memphis's offense. Maybe not necessarily for yards with Memphis particularly, but shutting down by points only allowing 28 points last week against Memphis, which isn't too bad. And if Temple can hold SMU to 28, I think they have a chance to win this game. But the reason why I'm picking SMU to win this game is I think they're going to utilize their running game of Xavier Jones and Keymon Freeman. Xavier Jones has 12 rushing touchdowns this season. SMU as a whole has 22 rushing touchdowns this season. And Shane Buechele is leading the Mustangs, who lost his starting job at Texas to Sam Ehlinger. And I think SMU picks up a big win. They've beaten TCU already this season. Arguably, they should have probably lost to Tulsa, but SMU is still undefeated, and they're undefeated for a reason. And I think they will stay undefeated this week. Next, we have number 12 Oregon and number 25 Washington. The way I see this could potentially be an elimination game. Washington, they need this win to stay in the race to win the Pac-12. At least what I think. And Oregon, they need to win this to stay alive in the race for the college football playoff. Because a 2-loss Oregon team will not get into the college football playoff. But if Oregon wins out, they could have a chance depending on what happens around them. But this matchup, it looks a little bit even on paper. Because both these teams, they're 29th and 30th in scoring offense, respectively. Both are averaging around 36 points per game. But what I think a big difference in this matchup is going to be, Oregon is third in scoring defense by only giving up an average of 8.7 points per game, while Washington gives up an average of 19.6 points per game, which is another reason why I'm favoring Oregon. But the main reason is because Washington is 63rd in pass defense. I think Justin Herbert, I think he's going to utilize that, and I think he's going to take advantage of Washington's lack of secondary, because Washington does have a talented defense, although I felt like they struggled a little bit against USC. Yes, they got the win, but USC had a couple of missing key players on defense. And Keaton Slovins was not in the game. It was Matt Fink. So I think Oregon wins this game, but I think it's probably going to be close considering that Washington is going to have the home field here. But Washington has already lost at home this season to Cal, and I think they lose a second game at home this season. I'm going to take the Ducks. Next, we have number 18 Baylor and Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State, they have 2 losses already this season. One was to Texas, which they made the Longhorns earn that win, and also to Texas Tech, a team that Baylor, it took double overtime to beat, but Baylor still got the job done. So Baylor is still undefeated, but can they stay undefeated? They're going on the road to Stillwater to take on the Cowboys, and I'm going to pick Oklahoma State in this one. I know I went to the well once on Oklahoma State this season, and it didn't work out for me. But I think it's going to work out this time. Because Oklahoma State, they are coming off a bye. And they don't have to travel because the game is in Stillwater. So with not having to travel and coming off a bye, Oklahoma State is going to be well rested. While Baylor, it took overtime to beat Texas Tech. So I am going to be taking Oklahoma State in that game. And next we have what is going to be one of the best matchups of the week. The schedule for this week, it doesn't look as entertaining, but we do have 3 ranked matchups this week. So that's something to be thankful of. Number 17, Arizona State, and number 13, Utah. This is, without a doubt, an elimination game. The loser of this game is going to be eliminated from college football playoff contention. And this is going to be a big matchup. The biggest battle within the game is going to be the running backs, your star running backs between Eno Benjamin and Zach Moss versus the rush defense. Utah is second in the nation in rush defense, and Arizona State is 12th. So both these run defenses are really good. They are not only the best, some of the best in the Pac-12, but some of the best in the nation. And can Jaden Daniels, freshman quarterback for Arizona State. Can he win the game with his legs? Because Arizona State, they already have come from behind wins this year against Michigan State and Washington State. In both those games, Jaden Daniels was clutch, moving the football with his legs and being mobile. So if Jaden Daniels comes through in the clutch and he's able to run the football with his legs, then I think Arizona State will have a good chance of winning this. But I think overall, I think Utah, they have the better defense, in my opinion. And I think Utah, they have that upperclassman leadership, that senior leadership. And I think Utah will pick up the win on their home turf. I'm going to take the Utes, but I think it's going to be very, very low scoring. I think it's going to be in the range of 21-17. So pretty low scoring for a Pac-12 game. Next, we have Arizona and USC, a Pac-12 after dark matchup. And there's without a doubt who I'm picking here. Arizona's coming off a blowout loss against Washington last week, while USC, they may be coming off a loss against Notre Dame, but they played a top 10 team, and they didn't give up. They had a close game against Notre Dame. The scoreboard, it looks more respectable, but they did get dominated a little bit against the Irish. But USC, I think, is going to be able to use the air raid to their advantage, because Arizona is 110th in scoring defense and 128th in pass defense, which is the worst in the Power 5. So I'm going to take USC without question. I'm taking the Trojans. Next, we have number 14, Boise State and BYU. And I am going to take Boise State here. I think Boise State, despite Hank Bachmeier leaving the game early with the hip injury, it's not season ending. But for right now, they're probably going to go with the senior quarterback, Jalen Henderson. Or they go with Chase Cord. Who knows who they're going to go with, but I would say I would lean more towards. Whether if it's Chase Cord or Jalen Henderson, I'm going to pick Boise State either way, because BYU has struggled all season long. They did get the win against USC, but that was early in the season. That was Keenan Slovis' first collegiate start on the road. So I'm going to take Boise State. And finally, we have the game of the week, number 16 Michigan versus number 7 Penn State. Game day is going to be there, so this is going to be an exciting one. So the way I see this matchup is, well, right away, you have to ask. Jim Harbaugh has a terrible record. In fact, nearly a goose egg. In fact, maybe even a goose egg on winning against ranked opponents on the road. And that has been a huge question mark ever since Jim Harbaugh took over. Because he was brought in to win these big games. The big games against the Penn States, the Ohio States, the Wisconsins, the Michigan States. And he has yet to do that. In fact, he has barely won against ranked teams, period. And we saw a glimpse of Penn State about how they look at this point. I think Penn State looks like a top 6 team in college football, maybe even top 7 team, which they are at number 7. But this is going to be a big test for the Nittany Lions. Although they are going to have the home field at night, it's probably going to be a whiteout for this occasion. For Penn State to win this game, they have to cover up Michigan's wide receivers. And if they can get pressure on Shea Patterson, force him to make bad throws, make him uncomfortable, Penn State should win easily. But for Michigan to win, you've got to step it up, Shea Patterson. He's got to step it up. And Michigan, they are 9th in pass defense. So I think Sean Clifford is going to have a big game on the ground for the Nittany Lions to win. And I do like this Penn State running game. And I think Sean Clifford just adds another element to it. So I am picking this based off of logic. Penn State is 2nd in the nation in scoring defense, and Michigan has already played against the number 1 scoring defense in college football in Wisconsin. and it didn't go over so well. And it was on the road as well. And this is another road game at night, very hostile environment in Happy Valley. So I'm going to take Penn State. I don't know how big it's going to be, but I think it's not going to. I think it's going to be a long night for Jim Harbaugh and the Michigan Wolverines. I'm going to say Penn State wins by at least double digits, at least 14 points. I think we could be heading towards Blowout City in this one. So those are my Week 8 college football predictions. Like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you next time.